I'm going to show you how to decorate 7 cakes for Mother's Day that are pretty, delicious, and fun to make. Let's start with a watercolour cake with a peel-off technique, which is one of my favourites. Fold a piece of parchment paper or baking paper in half a few times and then cut out a heart, so that you end up with several identical shapes. Of course, you could do this with any shape, and you can draw it before cutting it out if you're nervous to go freestyle. Snip the middle of each heart to make it easier to peel these off the cake later. Tint your frosting, and this is my 4-minute buttercream, but you can use whatever you like. I like to put the colours into piping bags for speed, but that's optional. If you do use piping bags, any piping tip will work because all of the texture will be flattened out soon anyway. Press a heart onto a frosted cake, and then pipe or spread your coloured frosting around it, going over the edges of the heart, which will attach the heart to the cake. But don't go over the middle of the heart because it's easiest if that's still visible. After placing hearts all over the cake and attaching them with your coloured buttercream, spread the buttercream to cover up most of the cake, still avoiding the centres of the hearts if possible. I let my kids watch me do this and they loved it. Their reactions in a second are amazing. I should mention that this frosted cake is cold. I put it in the fridge overnight to set the frosting so that the parchment hearts don't damage the frosting. Now it's time to peel off the hearts. I like to use a toothpick, sliding it into the slit you cut in the middle of the heart, and then pulling away from the cake to peel the heart off. Look at these reactions, how fun! Okay, if any hearts are buried under the frosting, you'll still be able to see the outline of the heart unless you have super thick frosting, in which case it's a good idea to use your cake comb a few more times to take off some of the excess. Use your offset spatula to scrape gently over the middle of the heart to expose the slit you cut, and then you can use your toothpick to peel it off. Peeling from the middle of each heart by using this slit makes for a much neater outline than trying to peel the heart off from the outer edge of it. This next design is great if you struggle to smooth your frosting, and if it's for someone who loves donuts. Spread frosting onto your cake as normal and smooth it as well as you can with a cake comb, but don't worry about indents or air pockets or imperfections. Just focus on pressing your cake comb down on the cake board to line it up straight against the cake, so that the sides of the cake are straight. Swipe any excess frosting off the top edge of the cake and then use a spoon to add gorgeous texture. Press the back of the spoon lightly against the frosting and pull it up the side. A hot spoon works best, so dip it into a cup or bowl of hot water every minute or so and then dry it off, and the hot metal will smooth the frosting as you pull it, and create these swooshes. Decorate the cake with cake donuts, which are super easy to make. Just squeeze a little bit of your cake batter into a silicone donut mold using a piping bag to get it neatly into the rings. Bake for the same time as you would for cupcakes, about 15 minutes, and then when the donuts cool, dip them in ganache, which is 3 parts of white chocolate and 1 part of heavy whipping cream, or double cream. Add some sprinkles while the ganache is still sticky, and once it sets, poke toothpicks into the donuts and then push them into the cake to hold them upright. Or use a bit of frosting to attach them onto the side of the cake like this. Create a delicious floral beauty with a few colours of buttercream, or any other frosting, and a few piping tips. You'll also need a flower nail, and to move the flowers onto your cake, it's easiest to pipe a dot of buttercream onto the nail and then cover it with a little square cut out of parchment paper, or wax paper or baking paper. Use any petal-shaped piping tip, like this number 104, and hold it so that the wider end of the teardrop shape is pressed down against the middle of the nail, and the narrow part points outwards. Pipe petals by squeezing the bag and pushing the tip slightly away and then pulling back towards you. These pansy-type flowers are so quick and easy to pipe, and it's easy to add lots of variations, which I'll show you in a moment. Use a round tip or a star-shaped tip to pipe a centre onto each flower, and then carefully pull the paper sideways off the flower nail and lower it down onto a tray or baking sheet. You can add variety to your cake design in lots of ways. Try changing colours, using different sizes of petal tips, piping a second layer of petals on top of the first, or changing the colour or piping tip you use to pipe the centres of each flower. After piping your flowers and placing them on a tray, put the tray in the freezer for 10 minutes. You can attach the frozen flowers to the cake by piping leaves onto the cake, using a leaf tip like a number 352, and then lift a flower up and peel it off the paper and press it onto those sticky buttercream leaves. You could use only flowers to decorate the cake, or add some piped details too, like I'm doing with this number 32 open star tip, and this tiny number 18 tip. This cake design is pretty and feminine, and best of all, it's entirely edible. Make a beautiful rainbow heart with a homemade stencil for this next cake. Wrap a piece of parchment paper around a chilled cake and mark the area your design needs to fit within. Draw a shape and cut it out, leaving the parchment around the shape intact to use as your stencil. Optionally, use another stencil as well to create detail within your parchment stencil shape, and then wrap the stencils around your cake and tape or pin them in place. Spread buttercream over the stencil, and you can use more than one colour if you like. You only need a very small amount. Scrape the excess off to leave a thin, smooth layer behind, and then carefully peel the stencil off the cake to leave the design behind. You can add a border around the bottom of the cake or around the top. I'm using the leftover colours from the stencil, spreading them onto a piece of plastic wrap and then rolling it up into a log, to put in a piping bag fitted with a 1M star tip, and then piping these waves on top of the cake, overlapping the tail of each one to make a colourful border to match the stencil design. Here's another fun rainbow design that's even easier to create. Spread or pipe coloured buttercream onto a cake. Scrape around the cake gently with a cake comb a few times to leave a thin, smooth layer of colour on the cake. After each time you go around the cake, scrape the excess frosting off your cake comb into a bowl. If you take off more frosting than you want, and the band of colour is too thin, spread some of the scraped off coloured frosting back onto the cake, and then smooth it again. Pipe or spread your next colour underneath, overlapping the first colour so that there's no gap between the two colours. There are 3 tricks to this design. First, use a crusting buttercream, like my 4-minute buttercream, because it gets really firm when it sets and makes this layering possible, instead of the colours blending into the frosting on the cake. Second, take your time to get the frosting on the cake really smooth, because these colours won't completely cover the cake and they won't disguise messy frosting. For tips on this, check out my tutorial on 15 frosting mistakes and how to fix them. And the third tip is to chill the cake in the fridge for at least 2 hours before you do this. That way, the frosting will be very firm and you can add and scrape these colours without damaging it. Also, the colours will set very quickly when they're on top of very cold frosting, so the colours will create layers over each other instead of blending together. To add some detail to the top of this cake, squeeze a little bit of each colour of frosting onto a cake comb. Then lower the comb onto the top of the cake and pull it in a curved arc shape over the top surface of the cake to leave a rainbow behind. You might need to spread on a bit more of some of the colours and scrape again to get good coverage. You can use a piping tip or a toothpick to draw a design in the rainbow as well if you like. To learn hundreds of cake decorating techniques and designs, visit my online cake school on britishgirlbakes.com. You can take individual courses or join my Club Plus for access to every master course, mini course, live workshops, and 5-Minute Fridays. I hope to see you there. The easiest kind of cake to make is a tray bake cake, because you bake and decorate and serve the cake in the same dish. Use a few different piping tips and a variety of colours of frosting to create different textures, and you can even make shapes for designs like this heart. I'm using my 4-minute buttercream, but you can do this with ganache, whipped cream, or meringue buttercream too. And this is my very vanilla cake recipe, but you can even do this with brownies or chocolate chip cookie dough. Tray bakes are easy to make and decorate, and easy to transport and serve. If you don't feel like decorating a Mother's Day cake for yourself, or you can't choose a style or design, let your kids decorate a cake for you. It's a fun activity that they'll love, and even if it's not beautiful, it will be delicious and a wonderful memory. These are 2 of my kids, James and Max, and they wanted to make their own baking videos, and you can watch this one and all of their other videos on their own channel, British Boys Bake. Ta-da! They would love it if you subscribed. Yay! I hope you've seen some designs you'd like to try for your next Mother's Day cake. Thanks for watching.